On previous episodes of Not So Science Fiction, we've nerd talked with experts who talk about how different technology and inventions are changing the way we live, everything from health and safety to virtual reality. But who are the people behind these inventions? What's their life like? And how do they stay creative and innovative year after year? That's who we're talking to today. We're speaking with a master inventor who has more than 80 patents attached to her name. We're talking about how she works with people around the world, how she's developed the career she has, and what type of innovations she works on. All the confessions of a master inventor. I'm Catherine Dollar, and this is Not So Science Fiction. By the way, today's Nerd Talk is brought to you by Moxie Blue Media. Moxie Blue Media creates story-driven campaigns to help brands improve the way we live, communicate, innovate, and conduct business. So check them out if you're looking for a better way to reach your audience, communicate, and do business. Romelia, I am so excited to have this Nerd Talk with you. Thank you so much for joining. We've gotten to speak to other quote unquote inventors before, in the sense that they're, creating technology, they're using technology, but you are like inventing all the time. Like, you're even considered a master inventor. That is so cool.
Hey, first of all, let me say thank you for including me in your series here. So I appreciate everything you've done, Catherine. You've just been wonderful to work with. And certainly welcome to everyone that's listening to our call, watching us, and kind of hearing our conversation. I think you hit it right on the nose. I have one of the funnest jobs in the world. I get to, innovate with IBM's clients. I get to come up with ideas. I run a lot of design thinking sessions, which are sessions where we co-create, we collaborate together, we bring diverse thoughts together so that we can all come up with brilliant ideas and build off of each other's ideas. So I think that's been one of the funnest things I've done in my career. I work with, major entities. Like right now, I have probably two major projects. One is in space surveillance, and another one is over in, health and human services. And I work with, impacting society with the health and human services work, and with the space surveillance, certainly we're impacting the world. So, I think it's cool stuff to be doing in the areas of app modernization and health and human services. And I'm just excited about everything I do every day.
And that's so awesome to have that feeling, and your energy definitely speaks for itself. Like, you can hear the excitement in your voice and just the way you talk about these things. And that kind of answers one of my questions is, you're at 82 patents, is that right? And counting?
That's correct. I think I may be at 83.
82. Because it's like every time I read up on you or talk to you, it seems like that number has changed and increased.
So I had a target for myself. So a while back, I said, I would love in my career to have gotten to 75, inventions that have been patented. And so I submitted a lot of ideas to try and get there. And lo and behold, I got there. I got my, my 83 now. And I think that's wonderful. So I surpassed my goal.
Have you set a new goal?
No, I haven't. Just to have fun at work is my goal right now.
Absolutely. How does one get into embedding like this? I mean, you've answered the question that obviously you're working with other clients too. So it sounds like maybe they're coming to you with a problem or idea, and you're kind of co-creating is the word I've heard you use.
Yeah, I always tell inventors, I didn't start where I'm at today. Where I started was I was a software developer in a development lab, and there were processes as we were developing our products, where our, intellectual property, IP lawyers would come in and they'd review our work and they'd say, okay, this looks really interesting. Can we patent that? Or that looks interesting. Can we patent that? And that's how I started learning. So I always advise, young folks, get involved with others that are inventing and learn from them first, because you can't just go at it on your own. I mean, some folks do. It'll be a lot harder if you do it that way. So learn from others that are around you. At IBM, we have a very collaborative, co-creative spirit. We always invite people to get into like invention circles together and build off of each other's ideas and learn from each other. So there's huge opportunity, certainly at IBM. If you have that opportunity outside of IBM, I would encourage you to work with others that are in this area. And certainly there's a lot of entrepreneurial organizations, especially here in the Dallas-Fort Worth areas, that have that spirit. And I've worked with them as well. And, so get involved with all these kinds of things and learn what people around you are doing. And I think that'll go a long way to helping, you position yourself. I certainly evolved my career where, I went from development to, doing a lot of technical support. I probably have had, 7 different jobs at IBM. And where I'm at today has been my sweet spot, right? Because I am, like you mentioned earlier, I work with clients. I hear what are their problems, what are their issues, and then I have to say, how would I use some technologies or some new business processes or other kinds of things and come up with creative ways to try and move them forward, right? And so it's important to kind of get that experience and then leverage that experience as you're doing things so you're not uncomfortable, inventing and creating, co-creating with other people.
Right. And how do you stay creative? I mean, you mentioned you use the design thinking and you were kind of feeding off other people and co-creating, but I mean, 83 patents, that's a lot. And I'm sure that doesn't even touch the surface of the ideas that you've come up with, either individually or in groups. So what do you do to come up with ideas?
People ask me that all the time, and they're like, you must get like assigned the coolest projects. And I'm like, I get assigned projects just like everybody else. It's what you turn your projects into that makes a real difference. So I would say the biggest thing you can do for yourself is every time you pick up a new project, figure out what would it take to really push the limits in here and do something really cool and creative if you have that opportunity to do that, so that you're excited about going into work every day. You're excited about the work your team is producing. You can ignite your team. You can get them kind of thinking differently. I think it's important to have a solid team, right? I don't think I invented all these, 83 inventions on my own. I have worked with people from around the world. I have, co-inventors in Costa Rica, in Argentina, in Brazil, in China, in Europe, and, certainly here in the United States. And so part of it is surrounding yourself with, great people that kind of have diverse perspectives and have the right attitude. I'd say, I can always tell when someone's going to be a good co-inventor with me when they don't sit around and say, oh, Romelia, your ideas are dumb. They'll say, ooh, I kind of like that idea. Well, why don't we do this? And why don't we do that? And you want to do that with other people too, right? I know I had a gentleman that I worked with a while ago. And, part of what, he was a networking dude and I'm more of a software application developer. And people always thought like, how do they have such different perspectives? It was that diversity of thought that we banked on. And part of what he and I would do collaboratively, I'd listen to his idea and I'd say, ooh, I like what you're doing, but why don't we do this? And then he'd look at that and he'd say, oh, I like that, but why don't we take it over here? And so we'd build off of each other's ideas. And people looked at us like, oh my God, they're competing with each other. They're crazy. They're too intense. We love the creativity and we found synergy in that. So I think part of it is figure out what makes you you and what makes you succeed. For me, it's collaboration with others. It's looking and examining problems. For others, it may be a little bit different. It may be, looking at technology. It may be looking at, trends. It may be looking and analyzing situations, business processes. So you have to kind of figure out what makes you you. And I'd say that'll take you a long way to becoming, creative. Diversity of thought is really important, whether that be gender differences, culture differences, work differences, empowerment differences. What makes you think? IBM has the motto of think. And, you need to be on top of that and saying, how am I going to think and take my work to the next level? And I'd say anytime you do any of that, you're probably kicking up your work a notch and it's going to look good. And so it's important for you to think, how do I want my work to be portrayed? And it's tough to do that. It's not an easy thing. It's a tough endeavor and undertaking that folks can kind of think through.
Well, absolutely, because there's been already so many ideas laid on the ground, right?
Yeah.
And on that subject, how do you deal with that when I could see where you and the networking person would work well together, because software and networking, they do go hand in hand in the sense you have to have a network to have your software working, and you want to have software and applications to make the best use of your network. Mm-hmm. So, but you're just looking at it from different angles. But when you're inventing something and maybe someone's come to you with a problem or an issue or just a cool idea, just a cool experience they want to offer in the world, do you look at what technology is possible and build off that? Or do you see the vision first
Yeah,
and work?
I'm more of a visionary person. I love, you know, coming up with what I would call, brain-hurt ideas, absurd ideas, crazy ideas, and then you rein them in a little, right? So you say, I want to do this, and thinking abstractly. Don't think, oh, I'm going to install IBM's, CP4D technology or, Red Hat OpenShift technology. It's not a technology thing. It's a visionary thing, and saying, I want to invent the next man on Mars. I want to invent going to Pluto. And then you start saying, well, is that really feasible? And then you start reining it in, reining it in, reining it in. We even have, I'm a big, proponent of design thinking. We have design thinking activities that do precisely that. We call that, your wedding cake, your birthday cake, and your cupcake. So you start with the big vision wedding cake, and it's, scrumptious, it looks beautiful, it's, this masterpiece. Yeah. But then you also say, okay, we can't all buy wedding cakes all the time. Maybe sometimes we're buying the birthday cake, which is still scrumptious, it's still beautiful, and it has its own look and feel to it and size to it that's smaller than the big wedding cake. And then some of us buy cupcakes or even buntinis nowadays where they're bite-sized, right? They're smaller, they're, something that's still scrumptious, but they're smaller. And so you have to learn to think agilely. So starting out with the big vision and then reining it in and saying, how do I narrow this down so that it becomes something really, really good for someone to take a bite out of? And I think that's important for all of us to think through.
That's such a good point. And I love that analogy because the experience is somewhat different. Obviously, having a 3-tier wedding cake is like next level extra. But if you're doing the birthday cake or the cupcake, it's still a similar experience in that you have this neat treat. This, like you said, scrumptious, it's delicious, but it's still dessert. And it's still there to add to the tablescape, to add to the eating experience, the social experience. So it's just
I'd say,
different.
There are some people in this world that can start by creating the cupcake and make it like scrumptious from the very beginning. I tend to be a big idea thinker and then narrow it down and say, ooh, this is palatable. And, proving that it can be done, documenting how it can be done is part of the patent work that we all do. So I think that's important to keep in mind. Sooner or later, you have to say, is this really a doable thing? And I think that's important.
Mm-hmm. I remember hearing you speak. So for everyone joining us, I met Romelia at, I believe it was the Alliance of Women in Technology there in DFW, and you were speaking and you gave some advice that had to do with just looking at the world around you. And this has been years ago, so I might not say it exactly how you said it, but the takeaway was look at the world around you, whether you're in your kitchen, your home, the park. What would you do to improve that experience, whether it's making it more safe, more fun, more social, more whatever? And I loved that because I was in the midst, I write science fiction, as you know, and I was in the midst of writing some stories, and it really took it to the next level and added that realism to it because I wasn't just pulling off of what I've seen done or heard done or whatever, but it was truly like taking experience from my home or looking at the window and watching strangers interact. And it's like, well, what if they could do this? And it really, it wasn't based off just limiting myself to, well, this is what they say all AI can do so far, And
I think anytime you stretch those limits, it is about bringing your own perspective, right? And I think each and every one of us is very unique and different. And so it's important to lend our thinking from that point of view. That's why I love design thinking, because everybody has their Post-it notes or Sharpies and the ability to everybody contribute ideas. I can remember being in meetings a while back where there was probably a dominant facilitator at the front of the room that would tell us all what to do and take notes and say, no, that's wrong. And this is right. And we're going to do this. This design thinking approach where everybody puts their ideas out on the table and then we all fairly vote on them and prioritize them and then figure out what can we do. I love that whole approach because it flattens things out a little bit and it lets all of us be heard. And I think it's important, the other thing that's important about design thinking is putting yourself in the shoes of the end user. So think about how do I view the world, not always just from my perspective or from a visionary perspective, but for whomever I'm building my technology, my system, my solution for, put myself in their shoes and start thinking about what are the problems they're having, and then how do I solve their problems? And I think those are critical elements in innovation and design that we all got to kind of do, especially if you're in business. You want to know, what are my people that I'm trying to support, supply a system for, get buying my products, whatever it is, those are your end users. You need to satisfy their needs. And I think that's a lot of fun to do.
That would be fun. And it does feel like a game when you explain it that way in the role playing.
I'm a game player. I love it.
And everyone is like so different, like you say. We have such a diverse world, which is what makes it so beautiful. People with different cultures and needs.
Mm-hmm.
But on that, so you have such a bright, beautiful energy. And I know from talking to you before, I mean, you really do want to make the world a better place. Have you ever, been working on an invention or going through one of these role plays and had to think, what if someone with not so good of intentions got a hold of this? Or, how do you get around the people that aren't as conscious or maybe actually have malicious intent?
Yeah, one of the wonderful things I had the opportunity to do was run a design thinking session in support of data scientists, right? And these were at an institution that's really into healthcare. They started asking me similar things. Oh my God, what if we design something that has inadvertent implications? There are even techniques when you're coming up with your brilliant ideas. You also have to force yourself to think about, okay, what could be done here that would be malicious, that would, do some kind of, unintentional thing in the system, and start laying that out and thinking it through. It may not be something that someone does intentionally. It's probably unintentional, but you do have to force yourself to think that way in today's world, because you do have to protect yourself.
Mm-hmm. Or the systems themselves. I mean, we've heard, and especially in science fiction, but even some people are like, AI, if it starts thinking too much on its own, does something, maybe not, it doesn't have malicious intent like, a human might, there's not necessarily that free will, but doing something that we didn't intend it to do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So it's important to run activities and really think that through, maybe even seek assistance from people that have that kind of experience. Nothing wrong with getting the help you need to protect yourself and make sure you don't introduce any kind of bias, any, unintentional results that you're looking for. I'm not afraid of technology. I know some people are like, oh my God, technology can be spooky and it's going to take over the world. I think if you use it in the right way and you think through the implications of what you're doing and you spend the time to thoughtfully kind of examine the results, I think that's where you really want to, kind of rein things in. The other thing is, you always should have the ability to, to override what the system is doing and maybe even inject human thinking along the way, right? And say, there's going to be a human involved to help us make the right decisions. Don't just, put things out there for, to automate things for the sake of automating things. You automate to a certain level, and then you have a human involved that, provides their intelligence, their experience, their expertise to help make the right decisions in a system like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally important. We see that a lot in the cybersecurity world too. And it does, like you say, come down to the humans. But I wanted to see your thoughts. And it's so interesting to have to think through so thoroughly all the scenarios, whether it's just different users and how they're going to benefit from something, or just making sure it does no harm. What are some of your favorite, just blow your mind, excite your soul type of projects you've worked on?
Everything I'm doing today really just excites me. Anytime I think about, impacting society and the world around us, I'm like, oh my God, that's so amazing that I'm doing things like that. I can remember when I started my career, I was, working on, 3270 data streams. I was writing structured fields, and people would look at me like, what is that? Whereas if I tell someone today, I go out into a county, I look at, how do we help, individuals that have any kind of mental illness or, homelessness or, aging individuals that need assistance, and how do we better provide assistance to them? I think everyone can relate to that. And, I remember when I started working on these kinds of design thinking sessions, I was like looking at the personas, because you always look at it, like I mentioned, from an end user perspective. So you're looking at it from the perspective of someone that is homeless, or looking at it from someone that has, been in jail and has some kind of mental illness, or, has a propensity to do drugs. And I was looking at that saying, oh my gosh, that's a heavy situation that, those personas are really, heavy individuals. And I was like, my workshop is going to be like, really kind of a bummer. But what I saw, the people we were working with in the county that serve the agencies, that, work at the hospitals, at the juvenile institutions, provide the mental health assistance, provide the homeless assistance. These individuals are extremely special individuals. They have so much vibrant energy in them that they emanate that, and they spread it in the workshop, even though we were working on all these things that kind of seem, foreign to me. They kind of, it's in their hearts and in their souls. So imagine this is what they do 24/7. They help others in society. I can't think of, better people to be collaborating with, and better people to kind of help society in general. Those that really have that in their heart, my hat's off to them, because they are phenomenal individuals. And I hope a little bit of that has rubbed off on me so that, we all are working to make a better place, and, helping, kids in STEM, helping, all kinds of, individuals, university students that are striving, in their careers, trying to figure out how to get started, all the way to new professionals. It's incredible the amount of impact we can all have in society and in the world around us. So I really, is there a favorite project? I just love, having created even some of my old systems. I tell you, 3270 data streams is my baby. People ask me, that's one of the first things you created here at IBM. I said, yes, it was written in assembly language. It's really old, archaic, things. But some of the world's production systems are still using it. And that's to me, I'm like, oh my God, people are running some of my baby out there that, it's running in production. These systems work, and it's living proof that some of the technology that I created for the IBM company is still out there running in systems, and it works. It is solid, and I'm proud of that. Some people say, oh, it's old technology. It is, but it works. And no one will ever question that it was really solid, great technology. And it still continues to be. And I predict it probably will be for the near future as well. So I'm proud of that. I just have done all kinds, when people ask me, how did you, know you wanted to do these things? I don't think I knew I really wanted to, change the world and society. I kind of evolved to that, and I'm always looking for, what do I want to do next, and evaluating how do I want to perceive the work I'm doing and really have it have an impact. Even my old archaic systems are still having an impact on the world. So I think that's pretty impressive.
No, it's so impressive. And that's crazy that people would even like point out, well, that's old technology. I mean, no, it has its place. It's still going. And that's the whole point, is to keep inventing and finding better ways to do things. I mean, in a way, what you're doing, your job is never finished.
Yeah. I think people get frustrated because they want to move to the new and the different. And I applaud that as well. I think, there's probably a nice little blend. When we look at our app modernization approaches at IBM, we tend to do a lot of iterative and incremental approaches to help shift the right things at the right point in time, and not do a rip and replace or a lift and shift. It's iterative and incremental as much as you can tolerate. And that's the philosophy that I've been adopting as I go out and I talk to clients on that modernization. It's iterative and incremental. You're not going to change things overnight, especially in today's agile world. And you got to be thinking about, to me, it is exciting to work with new technologies. I'm on a project right now where we're using Red Hat OpenShift and, some contemporary containerization, GitHub repositories, and that's cool. But we also have to be cognizant of how do we integrate some of that older, Fortran code, this older technology, but kind of give it a new look and feel and position it so that we don't stay stagnant. You don't want to stay on what you had and be stagnant. You want to constantly evolve. And I think that's a good philosophy to have.
Absolutely. And what an important point to make that I originally hadn't thought of, but it's so true, because you hear this all the time, especially in the networking world, is, even if you came up with the newest, coolest technology today and it's available on the market, doesn't mean companies could put it into place, because like you say, they're not going to be able to rip out and replace everything. I mean, that's a lot of money, it's a lot of time, it's a lot of talent. So
I think, there's a huge emphasis nowadays on, from a business point of view. I think there's one lesson that's been learned probably over the last 3 to 4 years, probably because of COVID and other things. You have to ensure you set up a resilient business that's going to thrive no matter what happens in the world today. And so people are looking at, how do I do things, agile, nimbly? How do I ensure that what I'm doing is the right thing in the near future? And what is the return on investment that everyone wants to hear? No one wants to hear, we have these large projects that take years to implement. We want to hear, okay, we can get something cool, neat done with a return on investment within the next 6 months, even shorter if possible. So you got to learn to think a little bit different. And that's why I love this app modernization approach, because you can start to, think about what little pieces of the puzzle can I plug and play at different points in time and evolve over the future. So it's cool stuff to be doing.
It's cool to think that you can be inventing within 6 months or less, like,
yes.
and bringing that modernization. Some people might see that as super fast. I do, certainly when I think of like an invention or something new and just starting to see that change in a matter of months.
I think some of the things that I see is it'll hit you when you're inventing. You'll be looking and trying to solve a problem and trying to say, how do I build this system differently or what? And then all of a sudden the Eureka moment happens and you're like, oh, why hadn't I thought of that? Maybe I should do this and that. And then you start putting your ideas on paper. And like I said, collaborating with others and saying, let's build on the ideas. And it propels itself. And some ideas may take a lot longer to kind of bake and do. Some ideas come really, really fast. And I remember I was doing one idea that, it just kind of, I was thinking about it probably so hard. I went to bed and I was like, oh my God, I woke up and I was like, oh, I've got an idea. And so then I started writing and writing and writing, and I reviewed it with my colleague and he said, let's add this, let's add that. And he was excited about it. We were both excited. And we submitted that idea within 2 to 3 days and said, let's try and get it patented. And let's, at this point in time, start implementing some of these things, because we were excited about what we had come up with. And so sometimes things are slow, sometimes things are fast. I wouldn't say all ideas are born overnight, but all ideas also can't, take years and years to build out. So it's probably a happy medium of everything above.
That's interesting. You mentioned the Eureka moment and that you went to bed and it came to you. And there is like an actual experience called the aha moment that you just described. Do you do anything to help facilitate those Eureka or aha moments? Or do they just come when you're asleep or
I think the main thing
or...
that I do is collaborate with others. I can't emphasize that enough. It's important to be thinking about who you surround yourself with and try different people at different points in time. I mentioned that, I have co-inventors all around the world. They're all brilliant and they all have different perspectives because they've experienced different things in their lives than I have. And so, I have people here in the US that are very different than me, but then people in all these other geographies that have life experiences that are very different than me. And I wouldn't have thought of it the way they do because I'm not in their geography. I didn't think about business in that realm, and they inject their thinking in me. And it's like, oh, okay. They'll bring me ideas and they're like, what do you think of this? And I'm like, well, what if we changed it this way? Or what if we did this? And we build off of each other. And that is just so important to be doing in your daily life, regardless of whether you're inventing or not. Is just learn from others and have compassion with others so that you can, help each other out through life. Life is hard enough as it is. Let's all enjoy it.
Really is. I love how you call it inject their ideas into me.
Mhm.
And that saying, because yeah, the more we gain knowledge, and they say that about people that read and learn other languages
Yeah.
too. It's like you're just soaking up those different experiences, and it actually grows your mind and your neural pathways.
That there
And
is something truly, so I am bilingual, I speak Spanish, right? And every time, I go to Latin America, my colleagues, I love being around them. And one of the things that I find, because I work here in the US, I do everything in English, right? At home, I speak some Spanish with my husband, but I'm surrounded by, school systems that are in English, work that is in English. And so when I go to Latin America, and I go visit some of my colleagues, my friends that are there. First of all, I've shaped some amazing, relationships with people in Latin America. They're just, some of the nicest people in the world. And then, they'll be talking to me in Spanish, and what I find, if I go down there that, in a week, I'll be there Monday through Friday. On Monday, my Spanish may be a little rusty, but by the end of the week, I'm a little bit more fluent. And some of it is you're around it, you're immersing yourself in it, you're hearing their ideas, their expressions, and you start expressing yourself that way. And it's unconscious. It's not like I deliberately say on Monday, I'm going to fumble around and then I'm going to get more proficient by Thursday or Friday. It just kind of happens that way. So when they want me to present in Spanish, I say, let's not schedule that at the beginning of the week. Let's schedule that at the end of the week. And everybody do know that Romelia is far more proficient in English than she is in Spanish, but she will do a Spanish presentation. And so, we undertake it that way. And they laugh at me and they say, Romelia, it's okay. You go so fast. We have to keep up with you. So if you do go a little slower in Spanish, we're okay with that.
that's awesome. That's such a compliment too. It kind of keeps the pressure off. Oh, that's
Yeah.
so fun. And thinking on this, or something you mentioned earlier that really stuck out to me is that you were talking about, when you're inventing and wanting to think of the impact of your work.
Mhm.
And what it sounds like you're really touching on, and we've talked about it before, is purpose.
Mhm.
And everyone, and you mentioned that with the social group that you were working on, that always work with maybe these homeless people or people that really need help, and learning from them, and just how they're almost meant for it, just their attitude,
Yeah.
is just really a right fit for that type of work. And it sounds from the way you talk that you found your purpose because you enjoy it so much. You're obviously very good at it, years of practice, but what would you say to someone that wants to have purpose, but maybe hasn't found it?
I think one of the things that I advise folks, especially when you're young, is look around you and say, who do I want to be like? Like, who do I admire? Who do I feel like has hit their stride that I think I could grow up to be? And it isn't that you're immature, you're not grown up. It's that you aspire to something, right? And so you start examining them and work on projects with them and learn from them. Don't challenge them, learn from them. And then over time, what I start doing is saying, okay, I'm going to craft my role on things because I want to be a part of it. Like when, some of the team in Health and Human Services came to me, they were like, hey, can you lead this design thinking thing? And I started saying, oh my God, this is a brilliant team. And I said, what did I tell you? I love great teams. And so I said, I like this team. I want to work on more projects with this team. And so I said, hey, so what I did was I tried to make sure they saw value in what I would bring for my piece of the puzzle. When I lead a design session, here's what I do. And it may be slightly different than what others do. The energy level I bring, the attitude I bring, the creativity that I bring in my workshops. And I think they see that and they're like, okay, it would be nice to have you in other workshops. And then I see what they're like. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a fun group. They're cooperative, they're collaborative, they work effectively together, they work effectively with me. And I surround myself with people like that. When I started working on this space project that I'm on, I was a little leery because the team that I was working on, they were kind of new to me. I had never worked with any of these, young men. And I was kind of like, how, what's their role? What's my role? And I was leading and facilitating a technical discovery session. And I started seeing, oh my gosh, these guys have diversity from me. They're younger than I am. They know a ton about Red Hat OpenShift. They have their hands on that keyboard all the time. And I said, I need to be around them so I learn more from them. And so part of it is having that purpose and saying, what do I want to kind of be like in the future? And then surrounding yourself with the right people. So you're learning bits and pieces here and there and evolving yourself as an individual. And then take a lot of time for self-reflection. There's a lot of time on the weekend that I spend, reading. And I do tend to read a lot of, technical books as opposed to books for leisure. I also do a lot of yoga. I do a lot of meditation and thinking to myself, trying to reduce stress. As you can imagine, I do go from thing to thing to thing to thing. And so I do need to kind of breathe and, inhale deeply and just say, take a pause. It's important to do all those things. And once I started doing yoga, I was like, oh my God, I want to incorporate this as part of my weekly activities. And I do yoga probably about 3 to 4 times a week and just immerse myself in that. And the other thing I try to do when I'm working on my space project, I focus 100% of my time on that. When I'm doing my yoga, I focus on my yoga 100% of my time. When I'm doing my health and human services, I try and focus all my energy on that. So I don't try and split everything. There are times when you do have to do that. That tends to be a lot to handle. So also think about how you do things a little bit at a time. Sometimes, this young individual came up to me, he's like, I want to have your role in the next year. And I said, it took me about 25 years to shape my role to get to where I felt like this is what I want to be doing. And here's how I want to go about doing it. So there's nothing wrong with that. It takes time to shape that role and figure out what makes you you. Another individual came up to me and said, I wouldn't want to be, you and be on the hot seat for inventing and innovating with a client. And I said, that's good that you know that. That is, there's nothing wrong with that. But what I do want everyone to do is figure out, what is it that I want to do? For you, it's writing books. Your storytelling ability, your ability to bring the best out of other people is just amazing, Caitlin. And I think we each have to find what we're good at and not replicate what, if I see you and I say, I'm going to go write a book, science fiction book, I'd be a duck out of water, right? And so I can't be you. You may not be able to be me, but you know what? I learn from you. And I learn, hey, maybe I need to be a little bit friendlier. Maybe I need to take some time out to do these kinds of things. So you can learn non-technical things, technical things from other people, how to carry yourself, how to, have a presence at work. So surround yourself with the right people so that you do succeed and become the individual you want to be. I think, sometimes people will say, well, you've reached the pinnacle of your career, Romelia, you're a distinguished engineer. Was that what you set out to do? And I was like, no, what I set out to do was to be a great mom. And I tried my best with my kids and my family, try to be a nice wife to my husband. And then I said, I want to excel at work to the best of my abilities. And I know, I would go in there and I think my personality changed over time as well. When I started at, IBM, I was hugely introverted and I would be afraid to talk to anybody. And it was
That's
like,
so
oh,
surprising
just lock me up and I'll write some code and I'll get
Yeah.
that done. But over time, I opened up a little bit more and I'm not the most extroverted person either. At least I grew and I learned from it all. And so you also have to be open to what you like today may not be what you like 5-10 years from now. And you got to evolve into what, life experiences are going to take you in different directions. I know, my husband changed me. Each one of my kids changed what I thought of the world. And I had them a decade apart. So it was like, okay, I need to, think things through and re-strategize on how to handle the family each time I had one of my kids. And so work changes you. The people around you change you. If you move to new locations, take on new jobs, work with different groups, and like I've been at the board at Baylor University. I'm now on the board at Texas Christian University. I've worked with University of Texas in Dallas and in Austin. And each one of these roles that I played changes you, and you meet different people that impact your life. And I think that's important, to embrace the change and say, how do I take the best out of all these experiences, all these people, all that surrounds me, and really move myself in the right direction that's right for me? It may not be right for anybody else, and that's not important. What's important is that it's right for you.
That's absolutely beautiful. And, when I was thinking of our conversation, which I've been so excited about, was I wonder if Romelia is a nature versus nurture person. Like, you're naturally born as something, or you develop it. And I think you answered it just there, is you don't only invent technology and new experiences, but you're 100% component of inventing yourself.
Yes. I don't think any one of us is born a positive individual. You have your personality in you, but every experience, you're not, am I going to be a good student at a university? You don't know that till you go to the university. Am I going to be a good student in school? It depends on the teacher, depends on the coursework, depends on what you're doing.
Yeah.
And you got to figure out, gee, I like math, and then you start honing in on, okay, if I like math and I like science, what can I do at a higher level? And I started taking like a lot of science classes when I first started at the university, and I figured out, okay, that is not me. I'm more of a mathematician. And so I started saying, let me embrace more math coursework. and then I found computer courses, and I was like, oh my God, this is so much fun. It's playing games, it's solving puzzles. That's for me. And you have to try different things. I wasn't born a decent wife. I had to work at it. We all have to work at our marriages, our relationships. Sometimes we have to work at our friendships with other people. I have one friend of mine. She has been my friend since probably 7th grade. And I have another friend of mine that's been my friend since preschool. Isn't that amazing?
That's amazing.
And I have to work at those relationships and be very conscious of, oh, I need to call him or her up to reconnect and stay engaged with them, because they're my lifelong friends. Someday they'll probably be the people that I know most in this world, right? And so you gotta, I wasn't born a good mother. I'm sure I made plenty of mistakes with my daughter, as I did with my son, because I had to relearn everything after a decade of not, being a baby's mom. I was already like, okay, I'm starting to get into the teenage years. And then I went back to being a mom of a baby. And I was like, okay, and my son was a lot of work. He was a big challenge for us. And so each one of these experiences teaches you something, teaches you, in the case of my son, a lot more patience, because he was a tough kid. He, would cry all the time. He had a little bit of health issues, but we got him through all of that. And so each one of your experiences, whether they be at work or at home, does change you. There's been people at work that have challenged me technically, maybe even personality wise, and you have to be open to all of that. And you may get frustrated going through it, but it's all part of the learning experience and the growing experience. And, don't go punch somebody out. Just, figure out, how do I handle this in a very professional way and ensure that you're moving yourself along to steer to the people that bring out the best in you. I think that is extremely important. I couldn't emphasize, part of, people say, oh my God, you worked at IBM for such a long time. I said, why wouldn't I want to work at a company that has the most brilliant people in the world? Everyone that I have met in every geography that works for IBM are amazing individuals. I have, a gentleman that retired, in France, and I still stay in contact with him through LinkedIn, and we're still connected. And he's an IBMer, and these are phenomenal individuals. And all with him I do is, okay, what are you doing now that you're in retirement? And he'll tell me the amazing things. He's going back to school to learn Spanish. He's, learning about new, techniques in the medical profession. And I'm like, oh my God, and it gives you ideas. Another one of my friends is, telling me, oh, I'm going to go take on this board position at this entity and that entity. And I'm like, oh my goodness, how amazing are these people? And it starts to make you think about, okay, surround yourself with these people. They're out there. Take advantage of those role models that are out there, find them and leverage them the right way. I can't emphasize that enough.
Like, so beautiful and such good advice to give. And I'm going to make sure I continue to practice that even more so throughout the weekend and week, because I mean, you're right. We become what we surround ourselves with. And it sounds like you're so intentional too, because you've thought about, who do I want to be?
Yes.
And then you seek it out. So you're not just reacting, it's thoughtful actions.
Yeah. And some of the things, I set a goal, I may not reach it. Some I do, like my patent work, I've reached, but then I have other goals now that I have that I may not reach. But even if I only get halfway there, I've done good, right? Because I'm right now at ground zero on some things. But if I get to where I need to be, when I started doing yoga, I was like, oh my God, I'd like to where I can do yoga once a week. And I was like, okay, that was a lot. Now I do yoga 3 to 4 times a week and I don't bat an eye. And so you learn things and you have to say, okay, strive for this, and you may get there, you may exceed it, but you may fall short, and that's okay too. And know that that's okay to fall short on some things.
Well, and no regrets too, because one of my biggest fears, full disclosure, is being old age, 120, because I'm claiming I live a very long, healthy, happy life. But being like, man, I wish when I was in my 30s, I had done this or tried to do this, and just having that feeling like I had the opportunity and didn't take it.
Yeah.
That to me, that's one of the, so it's like, at least if I know I tried and I give something my all, and it was something I actually wanted, that I did it. And like you say, if I fall short, well, but I tried, and you can't regret.
And you did accomplish something. Yeah. Don't think of it as falling short. Think of it as, I did improve what I was doing, and here's how I improved it by. That's wonderful. And I think we all have to think that way, no matter what goals we set or what we're striving for.
And just see what happens. You never know.
Never know where life is going to take you. I could never have dreamt that, that I'd have worked for IBM over 35 years. That's amazing to me. B, I never would have dreamt that I would be impacting society in the world. See, I would never have dreamt that I'd be learning about quantum systems, that I'd be learning about the Internet of Things, that I'd be hearing about 6G networks, that I'd be hearing about all this amazing technology and how it's going to continue to impact the world. Those are technologies of the future. They're not technologies of today. And I'm just glad I've surrounded myself with all of that. And I'll continue to do that moving forward. And it's important to think about, what do I want to surround myself with? What I want to be learning about, who are the people I want to surround myself with. That's one of the reasons I stay in touch with some of my near and dear friends, because they're part of why I intentionally choose to surround myself with them. I'm going to be meeting with some of them next month, and I'm excited about it, because it's like, man, I get to see them. I haven't seen them now in about a year. So I do love to stay in touch with them and hear how their lives are coming along. And it's fun. Life is a venture.
And I can tell in the way you talk about it, which is just so exciting, because it is contagious, and you're feeding off other people, they're feeding off you. And it's just a beautiful, really, like, just human dynamics. It's just almost a beautiful ecosystem and experience.
Yes.
I do want to ask you though, you mentioned seeing all these exciting technologies that are of the future. They're not even like in the works now, like the 6G, the quantum, like some of the IoT discussions. What do you think the world's going to look like in 5, 10 years? Can we even put into words? Do you think it's just going by so fast that it's hard to even describe? Or do you have...
It's hard to describe. None of us would ever have imagined COVID, right? I mean, if you had made a prediction 3-4 years ago, you would have been wrong, right? Because COVID just impacted us tremendously. Who would have said all of us will be working from home, all of us will be on WebExes, Zoom calls, at least 5-6 hours a day? Who would have predicted all of that? The amount of automation. I think, when I look back and reflect on COVID, I think, we always were sitting there saying, oh, well, we can't work from home. We can't do this. We can't do that. It forced us. It forced everyone around us to do things differently. And I thought that was amazing. I saw, certainly I'm here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I saw the city in Dallas and in Fort Worth uniting to try and say, how do we put the right data so people stay well informed? And I thought, wow, people from competitive, businesses working together to ensure the city and the citizens had the right information at their fingertips. That was amazing to me. I'd say the automation, the ability to say, we're all going to work from home. Everyone needs to have their own laptop. And there's some businesses, certainly for IBM, a lot of us already had our own laptops, but there were places that, that was foreign to them. And so to see that evolve in that fast of a time frame was just phenomenal. Certainly, we're at our infancy, I would say, in quantum and Internet of Things and 6G. All those things are going to continue to propel and continue to evolve over the next, 3-5 years. And, if you had asked me when I first started learning about quantum, Romelia, where's quantum going? I never would have said, oh, there's going to be, 1,200 qubits in a quantum system. That exists today, right? And I just probably learned about quantum maybe 6-7 years ago when there were 4 qubits in the system. And so it's like, wow, that just blows my mind. The leaps and bounds by which things are growing and changing is just phenomenal to me. And I just think, whatever guess I would make right now about the future, I could tell you it will continue to be digital. I don't think we're going to go back. I hear people all around me, I don't want to go back to it, face-to-face meetings, 24/7. I want to do things remotely every now and then. So I predict we're going to have everything continue to be digital, continue to be automated, and evolve in different ways, with a lot of care and feeding, like you mentioned earlier, on, am I doing the right things with the technology that I'm using and keeping the world safe? I don't want to introduce things that are going to be, dangerous in society, but do think about the changes we all need to make. I work, because I work in the area of app modernization, I work with a lot of, institutions, clients that have, systems that exist for, 10, 20, 30 years. And, and it's very hard to move off of some of those things because they were built purposely. They were built with some intricacy, and now you have to evolve them and surround them with the right things. So I think that's, the world we'll continue to live in is going to be ever evolving and ever changing.
Which is exciting. That's what makes it an adventure,
Yes.
and just keep rolling with the punches and evolving and inventing and having fun.
Absolutely. Gotta have fun. That's one of my mottos. Make sure you're having fun. My mom used to tell me, haz todo lo que puedas, lo mejor que puedas. Do everything you can do, the very best you can do. My father used to tell me, just go out and have fun. And I like his philosophy, just go out and have fun. But I do love my mom's philosophy as well. They're both near and dear to my heart.
Well, and actually they match well, because as we talked about once, when you go into something with and you've even mentioned it earlier in this nerd talk, when you go into something with that positive, fun mindset, you actually become more creative, right? Yes. Because if you're going into it like, oh, it's going to be so boring, I don't want to do this, your mind kind of closes off.
Yeah.
And so it's both.
Always embrace the fun, embrace the adventure that life brings to you.
Yep. And do your best at it. And there you go. Maybe you'll end up being a master inventor like Romelia.
That's cool.
Well, thank you so much for joining today. I always enjoy our discussions, and I know this conversation will bring so much just hope and imagination for other people, because main takeaways, you can invent, just find good teams, co-create, learn from others, but also keep inventing yourself. because both are you're capable of both. And so
Yes,
I know I'm excited to
absolutely.
keep doing the same and sharing this message with others.
Yes, thank you, Caitlin, for everything you do. And thank you for anyone that's listening in on this.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, everyone. This is Not So Science Fiction, and we'll see you next time.